Hi, I'm Ethany Gale, and sometimes people ask me for help with their prose writing or editing, and I briefly consider becoming a writing coach. Now, that isn't going to happen anytime soon because I barely have enough time for my existing projects, but I can tell you what I would say if I was a writing coach, and a lot of it you'll be able to apply straight away by yourself if you find it useful, without any further input from me. So basically, take what you think would be helpful to you and leave the rest. Great, let's go. All right, I'm going to talk about the structure of things first and then we'll go into detail. If you signed up for writing coaching with me, we would do it in a 6 to 12 month period because I don't think that working in a shorter time frame would be nearly as effective. And what we would do is that I would ask you to write one short story a month. For those of you who are usually novelists, I understand that this isn't your preferred length, but I still think that this is the right way to go. Most people are going to find it extremely challenging to write a whole novel in a month, but it's much more viable to write a short story in a 30-day time frame. And we want finished pieces so that we can look at quick and iterative improvement. My day job is actually in software development, and in software development, teams often work in sprints of 2 to 4 weeks. And at the end of a sprint, you reflect on what you did and how you can do better, and then you put those learnings into practice for the next sprint. And the same kind of continuous improvement principle applies here. Once you'd finished writing your monthly story, I would read it, and then based on that, I would suggest one thing for you to focus on in your writing next month. I'll expand on that shortly. I would also ask you to read at least 10 short stories every month and log the name and title of those stories. Ideally, you would be reading in the genre that you're also writing in, but if you want to read outside of that as well, that would be fine. If you're relatively new to writing fiction or you haven't had more than a couple of stories published yet, we would be mainly looking at getting your stories solidly publication ready. That means looking at things like, are there grammar rules we need to look at? Happens to most of us. I only learnt how to properly use a semicolon a few years ago. Are you using paragraphs where you should be using paragraphs? This is one of the most consistent things that I see early writers doing wrong. Big chunks of text that haven't been appropriately broken up. Are you formatting your dialogue correctly? A lot of early writers might think that they know how to do this, but it's not quite right. Are you staying in a consistent tense, like past tense or present tense? It's easy to accidentally switch between the two. Do you vary the length of your sentences? Having lots of sentences of similar length tends to sound repetitive and monotone. Do you have a full story rather than a chapter or the start of a scene? They're not the same thing. Are you starting your story in a good place? Early writers often take too long to get into the meat of the story. Do you have an appropriate ending? Early writers often want to write "to be continued" at the end of their stories, which I would strongly not recommend. Similarly, if you're writing in scenes, are you starting those scenes in the right place? You can sometimes cut the top of a scene. If you're writing in scenes, are you finishing in the right place? You can sometimes cut the bottom of a scene too. Are you cutting out unnecessary words? For example, instead of saying, "he crossed his arms across his chest and yelled noisily," you can usually just say, "he crossed his arms and yelled," without losing any meaning because we assume that crossed arms are across the chest and that yelling is noisy. Description. Do you have white room syndrome where the reader can't picture where the characters are or what's happening because you're not describing anything? Are you also describing some sensory details for us, like what something smells or feels like? Or alternately, are you describing everything in such great detail that it's really slowing the story down? This is not a all-inclusive list, of course, but you get the idea. Once we'd gotten all of that into a good place, or if you were already an experienced and published writer, we would usually focus on other things. I'd make sure you were really comfortable with submitting your work for publication. I've got other videos on that. And then we would focus more on expanding your writing tools and challenging you. That could look like writing a flash fiction piece under 1,000 words, writing a story in the format of a list, writing a story in the format of some instructions, writing a story in first, second, or third person if you don't usually write from that point of view, writing a story with multiple point of view characters, e.g. Alice and Bob and Carol. Writing a story from the perspective of a character with a more unusual voice or style, like a small child or a computer. Writing a story where the narrator notices a very specific set of details because of who they are, or sees everything through a certain lens, like they describe the teeth of everyone they meet because they're a dental hygienist. writing a story with multiple timelines where it shifts from the past to the present and back again, etc., etc. So to give you an example, let's say that I'm working with Joe and he gives me his first story. I read it and I say, Joe, for your next month, I would love you to focus on paragraphs. So then he can go away and he can write about whatever he wants, but hopefully he's being very mindful about his paragraphs. And then when I read his next story, I see an improvement in the paragraphing. And then I say, well, this is great, Joe. Your paragraphs are definitely better. For next month, I want you to focus on sensory description, so we get a better idea of things like how things are smelling and tasting to the characters. And again, Joe goes off and writes whatever he likes, but this time he's very deliberate about putting that kind of sensory description in. If this sounds helpful to you, this kind of writing practice is something that you can do on your own without me or a writing coach. You do have to be conscious of the areas that your writing could use improvement in, which can be difficult because we all have our blind spots and is a big part about why you might want a separate human like a writing coach to help you with it. But if you're a newish writer, I would suggest starting with the list that I discussed earlier in this video and doing your best to make an honest assessment of whether you could use some more focus in a particular area or not. Regular reading, like the 10 short stories a month that I suggested, also really helps you to become more aware of where you can improve. The method that I've described in this video would have been one of the most helpful things I could have done as an early writer to help me level up, and I hope that it helps some of you watching as well. Thank you so much for joining me. If you've liked this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.